This podcast is brought to you by Podcast Nation.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Welcome to Nirvana Sisters podcast, where we take the intimidation out of well-being and beauty to help you achieve your highest state, your nirvana. We are sisters-in-law and your hosts. I'm Amy Sherman.
And I'm Katie Chandler. So let's get into some real conversation. Welcome to the show, Nirvana Sisters family. Today, we are sitting down with Dr. Jenelle Kim. She's a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, a 9th-generation doctor and herbologist, which is very cool. We're excited to hear what that means. And the founder and chief formulator at JBK Wellness Labs. Jenelle helps her patients incorporate Eastern philosophies into Western lifestyle for optimal health. So I can't wait to dive in and hear what all of that means. So thank you for coming to the show.
For having me. I'm
Hi.
honored to be here and so excited for our conversation.
Great. Well, we like to start off with our Nirvana of the week. It's just a little something that brought you joy today or this week, just a little highlight. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Amy, what was your Nirvana? Let's start with you, Amy.
Well, let's see. Well, I would say, so my kids go to summer camp and it's been like a wild June, just with the end of school and getting them ready to go to camp and all the stress and anxiety and just craziness. But they left for camp over the weekend and it was definitely bittersweet and it's definitely quiet in the house. But I would say my Nirvana was just getting those first pictures of them enjoying and having fun. And I could like exhale and be like, okay, they're doing good. They're in their Nirvana. They're running around. They're outside and super happy. So that was definitely my highlight and Nirvana of the week. What about you, Katie?
That's really sweet because I feel the pressure and the stress of like saying goodbye to them on the plane, I'm sure for you. And this isn't the first year, so it's probably getting a little bit easier, but to see them happy is, I'm sure, such a nice relief. So mine is camp related as well. The girls for the first year are going to day camp and we dropped them off on Monday. They're there all day, 9 to 4, which maybe isn't like the longest day for my 8-year-old, but it is probably for Reese. She's 4. But picking them up, that was my Nirvana the first day, and them hopping in the car, like smiling ear to ear, so happy. Aww. Had the best time, felt great about it, couldn't wait to go back tomorrow. It's just like a sigh of relief. We're doing the right thing. They're good. So that's nice. What about you, Jenelle?
Well, we're certainly all on the same page because right when you said that, the first thing that came to my mind was also my 2 young boys. And there is something about picking them up. Every single day I get butterflies in my stomach. It sounds interesting or funny to some, but I have a feeling you both totally understand what I'm saying. And to see their little faces, especially the little one, because he still hugs me and gives me, a huge embrace and tells me how much he loves
Aww.
me. And it's funny because now my 9-year-old is kind of similar, but in a totally different way. And it's so interesting to watch them, at different stages. And it's definitely something I'm so grateful. It's very grounding. It very much brings me into the very present moment, no matter what's happening in the day. So I would completely agree that that's my moment.
So sweet. So you have a 9-year-old?
I have 2 boys, 9 and 5. So, yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome.
I know. I love that.
I have 2 boys as well.
Yeah.
They are 12 and 14. So,
yes,
or no, 12 and 15. Sorry.
I know. Tell me about it. Mine just turned 9 and 5 in April and May. So it happens fast.
It flies. It really does.
All right, so let's get into it. I'm excited to hear about this because I don't know about you, Amy. I don't know a lot about Chinese medicine, and I definitely don't know a lot about herbology. I'm saying that correctly, right?
Absolutely.
Herbology, to be an herbologist. So, Dr. Kim, would you prefer us to call you Dr. Kim or Jenelle or Dr. Jenelle Kim?
Whatever you feel comfortable with, but Jenelle is perfectly fine. Absolutely.
So, Jenelle, help us understand, like, what are the cornerstones of Chinese medicine and what does it mean to be an
Absolutely.
herbologist?
So those are definitely big questions, and I love them. So the cornerstone of Chinese medicine and understanding the body, the way I would describe it, is understanding how everything functions and flows as one whole body, right? So mentally, physically, Eastern medicine actually even gets into spiritually, not so much like the outer realms of spirit necessarily, but that we connect in many different ways within our body. And it's how the way I like to explain it when I speak around the world is how we can make our body function at its optimal and flow. And that's how I would break down Eastern medicine. It might not be exactly how everyone else does, but especially to the outside world who doesn't know so much about Eastern medicine, I love that explanation. And so then it utilizes herbal medicine and acupuncture, other modalities as well. We hear about cupping and gua sha and all of these different techniques that are now coming into the Western understanding. But it's using all of these modalities, these ancient practices that have existed for thousands of years. Again, how to make our function, how to make our body function in its optimum and flow properly. Because I always say, if everything functions and flows, even your skin cells, to your organs, to your muscles and joints, then you have longevity. And that, to myself, in my humble opinion, should be all of our goals, right? So
I love that.
I love that. So is it sort of like, I think we're seeing, and we've actually interviewed a lot of people
yes.
on many of those subjects. And so is it sort of like this mind, body, spirit, holistic well-being when you hear the word Chinese medicine or Eastern medicine?
I think that's very accurate. I do. Every single aspect of it, because everything comes from, chi. Everything comes from the universe, and we are microcosm of the universe, and the universe is a macrocosm of us. And so, yes, when you kind of look at it that way, you start to break everything down, and it is very holistic in that manner. So that's where I start to talk about chi.
And chi,
go ahead. I think you're taking the words out now.
Help us understand what chi is. I've heard the word, but what
it's amazing because 20 years ago when I started in the beauty and wellness industry here, in the United States, if I said chi, people would look at me and wonder, what in the world is she talking about, right? So chi, again, exists everywhere around us and within us. From the Tao or the universe, for those that resonate with this understanding, right? From the universe came chi first. And that's how everything breaks down. Then when we're speaking of the universe and our bodies, one other principle you will hear about is yin and yang, right? And so I don't want to go too far into detail, but a greater kind of a bigger perspective way of understanding it is that from chi then came that symbol of yin and yang. And that is the dichotomy, the duality of everything in our entire world. And it's really important to understand that duality, that dichotomy of the two when understanding our human body as well. So what I mean by that is we have our universe, for example, a very simple principle to understand. Yin and yang is like day and night, right? Yin and yang is loud and soft. Yin and yang is feminine and masculine. And within each is the other. And so they're constantly changing. And that's why if you're familiar, most people are nowadays, with that symbol, it almost looks like two fish. And on the one side is black and one side is white. And then they have two little eyes almost. And that literally symbolizes what I just said, that there is that constant duality all the time. And so now looking at the human body, we have that in our bodies as well. We have those components of yin and yang. And what I mean by that is yin is more substance, right? It's like our body fluids, it's our blood. Yang is the activity. That's our chi. And so when you kind of think of it this way, you could almost imagine that, of course, the Western way of understanding, we have circulation and we have our arteries and our veins and our pumps, and that's how everything keeps moving. There's so much more, of course, to it, but we have that understanding. In Eastern medicine, one way to understand it is that chi is exactly what makes blood flow. It's why I'm talking to you right now, right? So, and when it comes to movement, which is one of the three kind of M's or the three pillars I talk about, medicine, meditation, and movement. Through movement, especially through Qigong, people can actually feel Qi. So it's not really something so, it actually can be tangible. It's not something you necessarily see, but every single thing, this desk, that tree, you and I, we all have Qi. And so I hope that's an easy way to understand what Qi is.
Yeah, I kind of took it as it's the balance of the energy and the physicality that we have within ourselves, and that's all around us. Is that
absolutely
kind of a fair way to say it?
It's defined as vital energy. You'll see that a lot. So exactly right.
Okay.
So interesting. I never that symbol, the black and white symbol. I think you just said it means chi.
The yin and yang.
The yin and yang. I never realized that. I guess I've just seen that symbol in the
Right,
context of yoga or meditation and
right.
sort of knew what it meant, but the way that you just described it totally makes sense with like the the black and the white,
I'm
and
so glad
it's
to hear
very
that, Amy.
interesting.
My
Thank you
favorite
for
thing
sharing.
is to, have things make sense. It's my favorite thing as well. And that's actually one of the reasons I love Eastern medicine and Eastern philosophy. It can be a little different sometimes from the ways in the Western world of what we understand. But if it always goes down to principle, we're all human. We all are born into this world, no matter what our beliefs, what our ethnicity, what our age, all of that. It all comes down to principles. And so I find that when I share those principles, just as much as I enjoy and it just resonates and makes sense, I see that no matter where I go in the world. So I'm so glad that you see that as well. Yeah.
And what are the 3 M's that's part of your philosophy and your
That's
practice?
exactly right. So the 3 M's are basically like the pillars that hold up the whole house, right? And they are medicine, meditation, and movement. And so medicine to me is ultimately the formulation, my lab, everything that I've devoted my life to on the herbology end, right? Meditation is actually the book I just put out. For example, it's the philosophy, it's the way of life. I call it living meditation, right? So I'm sure we can go into that. I won't go too far, but just as we sit down and practice different meditative techniques, or we want to be in that certain mindset, living meditation, they're principles that have been passed down my lineage for centuries upon centuries. Of course, not just my lineage, but they exist, right, for thousands of years. And it's ways to look at every single moment with a certain kind of mindset, knowing that we always have a choice, right? And so that's kind of the philosophy of life. And finally, it's movement, right? Ways to truly move our body. It can be any kind of exercise, but particularly movement, again, that's kind of been passed down by our ancient sages for centuries as ways to really not just exercise externally, look good, have strong muscles, have a sleek body, but also to really exercise your internal organs and strengthen that chi. And so what I say are those 3 M's, medicine, meditation, and movement. If we incorporate those into our daily life constantly, because that's the way it really is, then we can achieve longevity, happiness, health, balance, no matter what is happening in our life. Doesn't mean we don't have down days or hard moments, but we realize that through that we can get ourselves out of it, right? So
I love those 3 pillars because they're easy to remember, and it's
yes,
something you can always think about if you're just kind of like, if your
yes,
chi is off or you're feeling, you know, just different, you could kind of go back to that, which I like. One of the things I was reading about when I was reading about you was that your father
yes,
was a Korean monk and raised
yes.
in a remote mountain temple, which is incredible. So I want to hear about that. But then there was something else that I thought was so interesting, where you said he taught you about, I don't know if I'm saying this
Right?
right, but dochi,
Yes.
or drunk on your thoughts. And I'd love to
Yes,
hear
it's
a
one
little
of
bit more
my
about that.
favorite principles. So in the book, I break down kind of the practice or the way of life, the living meditation. It's Myeongsang, just to be clear, the Korean art of living meditation. And Myeongsang translates as meditation.
Mm.
But to me, it's that living meditation. That's why I keep discussing that, right? And so the way I break down the book is into chapters, of course, but I call them keys. And there are 8 keys. And those are the keys that we can practice in our daily life to achieve that constant state of living meditation, right? And so key number 3 is absolutely one of my favorites, which is what you just said, Amy. It is stop being drunk on your own thoughts. And the Korean phrase is dochi. And especially in this day and age, in my humble opinion, I think that if we all were aware of this, how much different our lives, our world, our relationships, everything would be. And ultimately what it means is, just like we can be intoxicated by alcohol, for example, we can become drunk. We have to be aware that we can become drunk on our own thoughts. That's why I love that we started with that yin and yang. It's always a state of balance. And we hear it all the time. But again, if we stop for a moment and really think about what that means, the balance, even looking at that symbol, it means every moment we have to be aware of ourselves or not. It's our choice. But if we choose to be aware of ourselves, we have to be careful that even if we feel so strong about something, that we don't become dochi about it. We don't become so extreme in our thinking. How often do we see that? Of course, we might not agree with something and we feel, no, what you're doing is incorrect. But there's a fine line where all of a sudden you're in that same boat and you don't even know you're standing there. It's always important to expand our perspective, put ourselves in someone else's shoes. How do I know how that person feels? And I may not know completely, but if I stop for one moment, whether it's our children, whether it's our spouse, whether it's a good friend in business, and I stop and think for one moment, I want to see where you're coming from. It does something to our minds. It's a self-discipline. It creates different habits. And again, at the end of the day, it's our choice if we want to take it to be dochi and become totally drunk and stuck on our thoughts and not bendable. It doesn't mean we can't be steadfast, right? Of course, but just see the other side. And that's what that key number 3, stop being drunk on your own thoughts. That's it.
I love that. That's so powerful. And I love the phrase that you just said, don't become dochi about it, because I'm totally going to use that with people and they're not going to know what they're talking about. It's going to start a conversation and I love it.
Does it also apply to like becoming drunk on your own thoughts of things that you're self-obsessing over? Like if there's something that you just incessantly are like picking on yourself about, or thinking about something you're going through, or constantly being in a negative state, does it apply to that as well? Not just in regards to going back and forth with someone else?
I really love that you say that. You may be one of the first people who have brought it up in that way. So direct in that manner. And that's exactly right. We absolutely can also have it pointing back to us, that negative effect, right? Almost like the symptoms of getting too caught, becoming too extreme. Absolutely. And so once again, we see how these tools, because that's what they are, that's why I feel very compelled to share them. These are, yes, I am part of this lineage. I'm the first woman in this lineage. I'm the first to ever share it, East and West. I probably should have shared. Well, my father did grow up for a period of his life in the remote mountains of East Asia and Korea. It's like a movie. It's my own father. Wow. And it seems like that sometimes, My mother, on the other hand, is American. So I believe, I came into this world, again, it was my choice, but I've taken it on almost as a duty to realize that I am able to have that East-West, that I come from this lineage of thousands of years, then a little bit more easy to grasp centuries of these tools that help us to see a little bit more clearly and hopefully make them relatable to as many people as possible, So I love that. And for ourselves, like you said, Katie. So
it's really beautiful. And you are, I love the relatability that you're bringing with your books and everything as well. And the one of the M's, medicine. So that is where the herbology comes in.
Yes.
And so what kind of herbs are you using adaptogens and things of that
Absolutely.
sort?
So adaptogens is something that I have spoken about for quite some time now. I will backtrack a little bit so that it makes a little bit more sense for everyone. So of course I was born into this, but it wasn't until, fast forward seriously, I was a young adult that I realized, and it just hit me like that this is the direction I wanted to go in my life. And it was just like that. You hear people say that. I certainly had that experience, It was that moment in time and I had to make a choice. And that's how it felt to me. And I was actually on the direction to study Western medicine. And I decided, you know what, my whole life I've seen things, and it didn't hit me kind of until that moment. I've seen so many things treated, or how can I say, I want to say it properly, but I've seen so many conditions balanced, let's put it that way, that people were not aware of in my surroundings. And it kind of hit me as a young adult. I have to share this. People have to know about this in this part of the world. And so that's where I kind of went into Eastern medicine and got on my road to becoming a doctor. That didn't happen until a couple of years ago when I was about to have my second son, actually holding that doctorate. But yes, in our country, we understand Chinese medicine. I often refer to Eastern or traditional Oriental medicine because I come from a lineage of Korea, right? And so, of course, I've devoted myself to understanding Chinese medicine. It existed there before it moved into Korea. But Korea is known for certain acupuncture techniques and definitely known for advancement in herbal medicine. So just kind of putting that out there. Now, in this country, we think of them kind of one and the same, acupuncture and herbal medicine. In East Asia, they're a little bit more, while they completely come from the same root, as I've kind of already explained, you choose. And in this country, you see that a bit too. You usually go like to the Department of Acupuncture or to the Department of Herbal Medicine. And my lineage we definitely have acupuncture techniques, secret ones as well, that go through my lineage. But really my lineage focused on that herbal medicine aspect. And so to kind of break that down a little bit, answer your question in a moment about adaptogens, Katie, I speak around the world about different herbal ingredients. So important. We have so many. I mean, every medicine to some extent could be traced back to plants, right? Plant medicine. But also super important is the understanding of formulation. And that's what I've really devoted my life to. That's what my lab does. We contract manufacture products from skincare, body care, internal medicine, meaning supplements, tinctures, topicals for muscles and joints. And all of that is really based on certain formulas. So of course, the understanding of those individual herbal ingredients, but like the recipes, the perfect and secret recipes that have been passed down for centuries. And so that's something I think is really important. And I hope I've made some headway. I believe I have definitely been at kind of the forefront in the beauty and wellness industry, having people understand that in any product, again, internal, external, topical, skincare, hair care, you can have the best ingredients, but if they're not formulated properly, if the ingredients don't synergistically work together, it might not be as good as people may think. And there's so many products out there that are just kind of put together. I don't want to say thrown together, but that's what I probably should say, right? And so that's kind of the understanding of herbal medicine. And then finally, you speak of adaptogens. That's something I've definitely talked about for 20 years. 20 years ago when I brought this up, again, that, talking about herbal medicine was over everyone's head. I mean, I started in the spa industry. We were creating products that were in your Four Seasons, Ritz-Carltons, all of your beautiful hotels and resorts. And I remember being at the forefront of natural products, which first of all, it's hard to believe. There was a time that natural products, like people didn't even really get it. What are you talking about? It wasn't that easy to make them. There weren't a lot of options of ingredients. Herbal ingredients, are you kidding me? People would come over literally and tell me, Jenelle, at the time I wasn't a doctor, this all sounds great, but I don't think people are going to get it. I'd get rid of the Asian thing. And I would kind of just look and smile. And I went back to, we're all human. And I know that what I have to share, if I do my job properly, it's going to make sense and it's going to make a big difference. And here we are 20 years later. And, Korean beauty is the biggest, beauty industry basically in the world, and Eastern and Western, it's all integrating. So it's such a funny thing. And adaptogens were part of that. It's another way to understand. So adaptogenic herbs can be traced, like that word, to like the 1945, if I remember correctly, but definitely in 1945, 1947, around that time. And it was by Dr. Lazarev. And this understanding that there's these plants that help us to adapt, because when they grow in the earth, what they have to go through, their adaptability, how they survived, how they lived, when we put them into our body, it helps us to do the same, create that balance, right? And that's, again, I can go into many details, but I think this is the best way to understand it. That's what an adaptogen is. It helps our bodies adapt under stress. And there's a certain category of herbal ingredients that go into this category of adaptogens. Now, why I said 20 years ago, I wish to utilize that understanding as a way to help people understand herbal medicine. That principle exists, since the beginning of herbal medicine. That is herbology. And so if we want to understand it as adaptogens, awesome. And I think we're still at the very beginning of that, So I use a lot of adaptogenic herbs in our formulations, again, from skincare to capsules to tinctures, you name it, because of those particular herbal ingredients in that category, their ability to help us balance. They're very powerful. A lot of certain adaptogenic mushrooms I speak on a lot. I've been writing a lot of articles about that. Mushrooms are a hot topic. And certainly there's different ways of understanding the different types out there, but I still think we have, particularly in our country, not even scratched the surface of adaptogenic mushrooms. Your reishis and chaga and lion's mane, and then you have your astragalus, ginseng, angelica. I mean, I could keep going, but those are some of the important ones. So.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because it seems like in the last few years, it's become just more prevalent. And I mean, you see it all over social media. It's gotten to be pretty trendy, and it's found in a lot of really beautiful, natural, clean products, and people seem to be loving it. And it's really the only herb out of the herbology that I was familiar with. So that's why I started there. But I'm sure there's a massive abundance. And you actually reminded me while you were speaking about herbology, I was doing acupuncture years ago when I was living in the city, and it was in the summer, and I was kind of like intolerant to heat. And my acupuncturist, I believe she was Chinese. She gave me a tea that she said, if I drink this tea, it will help my body to like expel the heat that I'm not able to process. And it did. It worked. I loved it. I drank it all summer because it's a really hot summer in the city. But I completely forgot about that. I just
and that goes
memory.
on to yin and yang.
It's fascinating.
Also, like our very first minute of conversation, that there's hot and cold too, yin and yang. Yin is more cold, yang is more hot, and you constantly have to balance that. Sorry.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, which was also interesting just for
Yes.
like breaking it down for people who don't know this space as much. I think when I hear adaptogens or herbal medicine, I think of it as like something you ingest. It's more like supplements and things like that. And it really just opened my eyes to like, wait, that's actually in beauty products,
Absolutely.
in so many other products, not just
Right.
like things you're ingesting for your health. So that was, I guess naturally those things are in other products. I just didn't really think about it that way, about like the
and that's
herbal
why it
medicine
goes back to
piece.
formulation.
So,
You can have these incredible ingredients, and you hear on many different platforms or ways of understanding, for lack of a better way of putting it, that it depends on how much it can penetrate, right? How much your body absorbs it. And that's where I talked about that importance of proper formulation, because when you ingest an adaptogenic herb, it goes in, it literally assimilates through your digestion, right? And you take out the nutrients, again, if it's formulated properly and it agrees with you, so on and so forth. And so the one thing with topical is there is a little bit more attention that has to be put on that understanding of making sure it penetrates and absorbs into the body, if that makes sense. So it's even more.
I have a question, and this might be hard to answer, but I think our listeners might want to know. So if you were talking to someone about, using herbal medicine for different things, like, could you name something that most people would benefit from, like if something they're ingesting for their health, something for their skin, and like say something for their hair?
And so please remember, like I just said, it's one thing to have just one ingredient. It's another to have a proper combination, right? Because, and I will answer your question, Amy, but this is really important, because often, or almost always, because there are situations where taking just ginseng, for example, all by itself can be so powerful, right? For energy, depending on what kind of ginseng, especially for women's, for balancing hormones, right? So there's one that I just named, but you have to be careful, especially when it's just one herbal ingredient. Different than some of our drugs, if you will, because those side effects can be a lot more extreme in comparison to most plant medicine, but plant medicines are still very powerful and important. And what I mean by that is you can have Korean red ginseng, which is one of the most powerful ingredients. I think now around the world we know this, and in Korea that is so prized. I mean, one small root of Korean red ginseng could be easily $500,000. I'm talking about a small root, because of how powerful it is in the body, right? Especially for example, us being women on the phone today, balancing different hormones, bringing energy, libido, whatever that might be, so many different aspects. But here's what's interesting. If someone who has high blood pressure takes a whole bunch of Korean red ginseng, it could be really not so good for them, because it increases your chi, it raises chi. And with a high blood pressure, is a really kind of easy one to understand. That's why I'm giving this example. You can see where raising your chi strong is not really the best thing to be doing. So that's where I just want to note that. So Korean red ginseng is a huge, or ginseng in general is one of the most. It's Ren Shen in Chinese medicine, and Ren is human. And so literally, if you look at a ginseng root, they say it looks like a human being, which is really interesting. If you look at it, you can see it, like the arms, the head, the legs. It's really interesting. And that's how herbal medicine, thousands of years ago, that's how they came up with these names and this understanding. So that's a really important one. For hair, one in general would be hibiscus. I put that in a lot of our hair formulas. For skin as well. I mean, skin and hair are kind of an extension. It's kind of one and the same, but hibiscus is so good for blood circulation, right? So, I mean, there's so many more, but I'm just kind of calling those that come to mind. Angelica.
Yeah. I haven't heard about that ingredient. So that's a new one. I mean, I've heard of it, but not in the sense that you're describing it.
And then I'm sorry, I don't remember all of your examples, but for example, for immune system.
Oh, I just said skin.
Yes. So
skin
hibiscus,
and hair, and
astragalus, angelica. Those are ones that you'll definitely find in the formulas that I create at the lab.
And I love that you're mentioning that you still have to be mindful and careful. Like, even though these are natural and they're herbs, they can be very powerful. I know, not to completely go back to the adaptogens, but part of the reason why I'm so familiar with them is because I have to be careful because they affect your cortisol. And I have a condition where I don't produce cortisol. So I actually can't really use adaptogens like another person could, which is kind of a bummer because there's so many great products
Yes.
that have them in it that I,
Right.
love. But yeah, it's a good thing for the listener to pay attention to and to maybe check with your doctor first before starting something.
You check with your doctor, or another great thing when you're out there looking for supplements, like one thing, because people ask me that often, and we contract we work behind a lot of brands, and so that means a lot to us. We keep that confidentiality, but you kind of can see our stamp when you see these formulas out in the world. But another great thing for people to do is to really look into who these companies are, who their formulators are, because then you can start to trust a company, you know what I mean, a brand. Otherwise it's overwhelming. There's so much out there. And if something becomes, especially nowadays, trendy, everyone jumps to doing it, and that's.
Yeah. So are the formulators, is that noted on the packaging? Because that's interesting. I always think of like brands that I like that I think have good ingredients from what I know, but I've never actually looked further than like what lab is actually formulating it.
I don't know if it's always listed, to be honest. Usually you'll find, if it really matters, I'm thinking of a few of our clients right now. Usually you'll find that when people really care about their formulas, their ingredients, they really have a purpose for that product. And now more and more you see it because it resonates with people. So everyone's kind of catching on. You look into their story, who is the person behind it? Why are they doing this? What's their unique thing? Is it high quality ingredients? That's a great one. Is it, I know some of our clients will speak on, it is the synergy between the ingredients, you know what I mean? And that is super key. So yes, it is definitely a good practice. Because again, I totally acknowledge it can be very overwhelming stepping into a beauty store, a supplement, department, whatever it might be, because there's just so much.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. If someone wants to go in their town or city to start utilizing some of these herbal medicines, what would you suggest? Like if they are already going to acupuncture, would most likely that acupuncturist maybe have, I know my old acupuncturist that I used to go to, who I need to go back to, this is reminding me, had like all these herbs based on kind of what you needed. But like if someone's not seeing an acupuncturist that has that, is there, like, where would you go to find good quality herbs?
Sure. Well, I'll just kind of make it as simple as possible. It is true. Acupuncturists will, herbologists, for example, they will look at your individual condition and really start to balance. Of course, just like there's doctors who are so great and skilled at what they do, and there's some who are not as skilled. And so I want to acknowledge that. The same thing happens with acupuncturists, herbologists, you name it, any kind of practitioner, right? And so that's a good way. It's a little different. Like the formulas that I create at my lab behind the brands are ones that can be handed out in general, right? So there's certain herbal ingredients like you kind of mentioned, Katie. I don't want to get too far into this, but it's important for people to understand that, if you have a certain cold, like say you have a cold and what your cold is presenting as is a sore throat. Well, technically, the way you treat that cold with a sore throat is different than treating a cold that doesn't have a sore throat and you seem to have a really runny nose. I hope I'm not getting too detailed, but it's important for people to understand there's difference in symptoms because one cold has hot symptoms. That's the sore throat. And so you're not going to use a whole bunch of hot herbs, and so that's how in-depth herbal medicine can be. So for those types of more specific imbalances, cold is a little different because we can put out supplements that can kind of boost the immune system in general, right? That's a great place to start then, kind of your acupuncturist, your herbologist, certain practitioners. You can then go to other places that offer and really look into the supplements that exist and have people on the floors. And what I mean is like Whole Foods. I think we have Whole Foods all over the country for the most part, especially East Coast, West Coast, right? Your natural markets. I don't know if you have, for example, Pharmaca, but that's a great place in the West here that we have that I will definitely send people there when they're looking because I know that the herbologists, the herbalists on the floor are very, very good at what they do. It's very important to them. So that's kind of, I hope this is answering the question, but you find a good natural products store, or if you're searching, if you don't have that option and you are kind of looking online, do a bit of research and find, Pharmaca is on, for example, you'd think I work for Pharmaca. I keep saying their name, but it's just what's coming to mind right now. But that's where, going back to what we just said, look into the story of that company, look into where their ingredients, what matters to them. And that's how you can kind of narrow in on what works for you. And at the end of the day, yes.
So in Whole Foods.
And I would have let you go, but this is really important. At the end of the day, pay attention to how you feel. It's the most important thing. It goes back to that living meditation and those 3 pillars. So often we look to our experts, which you should, our practitioners, our doctors, our yoga teachers, for example, and do that because they studied and they have things to share. But at the end of the day, you need to be aware of yourself. So that means if you take what you think is the best ingredient and everyone says it's the best, and you take it, pay attention when you put something new into your body. And if after a couple of days or even that day, you start to have a headache and you cannot figure out why all of a sudden, I never get headaches and now I have a headache. I do not care how great that ingredient is. It's not balanced with your condition at that moment. And we really have to watch that, you know what I mean? And then you start to become in charge of your own health. So I just wanted to say that. Super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot on the show, like really listening to your body. And if someone is saying like, oh, it's just this or it's just that, don't worry about it. You're like, no, you need to, it's that mindfulness and that intentionality you have within yourself, where I think a lot of people seem to be kind of cued into that now more so than before. And I think people, it seems like, are asking their traditional doctors like, well, what about this? Or what about this? Because there's a lot more education out there and there's a lot more people talking about like, we need to mix the East with the West. And
even Western doctors, I don't know. I'm often on panels with Western, Eastern, and I believe that any good doctor is just going to want the best for that patient. And some of us, it's easier to give that advice than others, and that is the way it is. But in general, for sure, you see the world over. Like I said, much different than 20 years ago, or maybe a little more when I first began, and much harder paths.
Yeah. I hope that some of these more Western traditional doctors start getting into, the good ones already do ask those questions that are outside of like their lane, because it really does make a difference when they're looking at mind, body, spirit, not just like, here's your one condition, take this medicine,
the integrative clinics are a serious thing. I mean, it's happening, and definitely when you walk into certain Western medical doctors' offices, you're definitely seeing doctors who are doing exactly that, opening, expanding their mind, recognizing, these medicines have existed for thousands of years. It's so interesting because thousands of years ago, they were not doing clinical studies. This is true. They did not put it down in that manner, but there's something to say, right? I mean, I think more and more people are seeing that now more than ever, especially after the last couple of years we've all walked through, that there's something to say about these medicines that have worked on humans for literally thousands of years. So yes, there might not be this what the Western way, which is a very good way, don't get me wrong, of having clinical studies, finding every single fact, but sometimes there's a little bit more to it. That's holistic also in the way we look at everything. So there's
absolutely.
It's funny. Katie and I both had COVID around the same time, and one of the things we both saw, I think, was floating around TikTok was, and I don't know if this is, well, I guess it's herbal, but it's different, like the oils. So it said, if you have no taste or smell, which neither of us did, to use, I think it was peppermint oil and rosemary oil every day in your nose. And like we both did it and it both worked.
Stimulating to your chi. It makes everything function again. It's an interesting thing. Right.
Exactly. So that was like amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of why this world is kind of seeing more and more options is, there's certainly some negative aspects, which we're not trying to go down this path of social media and how small our world is with technology, but it does certainly at the same time, there's that duality, that dichotomy again of the yin and yang. There's certainly ways now that through being closer through technology and the internet and social media that we're learning these, you just have to fact check that a bit, not everything is on TikTok. In fact, that's one of the things that my team certainly does. Just say, Jenelle, Dr. Kim, if you can speak on this, do you agree or not? That happens a lot, actually, for different trends that we see, whether it's a trend, whether it's real.
Yeah.
So
I love that you guys do that. And, I feel like we could talk about so much of this for hours, and I would really, really, really love to have you back to talk in detail about acupuncture, because I think that is such a vast topic, right? And I've done it and it's worked for me, and I know so many people that it's helped. So we'll have to do that another time. But before we let you go, tell us just a little bit more about what JBK Wellness Labs does. And also, is it a branded CBD luxury skincare line that you're doing?
So JBK Wellness Labs is not named after myself. which many people think is named after my great grandfather. Those are his, who was an incredible practitioner of herbal medicine and acupuncture for that matter. And we are contract manufacturers, which means we make the products behind the brands. And again, I kind of touched on that already, but our clients are carried in your high-end resorts and spas, to your Whole Foods, to now actually they're having like prestige and luxury departments in Target and Walgreens. And so it's an interesting way for exactly what we're talking about to be, to be available for more people, which is kind of neat. So brands kind of spanning all industries. And so that's what we do. And everything that we do is rooted in that understanding of herbal formulation of products in general, clean beauty, of course, natural health products, of course. And so that's basically what we do. So we're not a brand. So we're behind brands. And so when you talk about the first ever, yes, I created the first ever CBD luxury skincare. I mean, basically I started the CBD industry myself in my lab with the people who started CBD back in, my first son was almost ready to be born. So over 10 years ago now, which is a long time in the cannabinoid industry. Wow. And that's a whole other conversation too. Not one that I jumped into right away, but another thing where I thought, this is going to be something, and I'd rather be educating about it properly, but I didn't really want to be like the queen of cannabis, so, but it all turned out. And so not to go too far down that road, but so JBK, we do a lot in the cannabinoid industry because we kind of helped to start it. So we were the first to make the salve, muscle and joint roll-on, so on and so forth. And always, it's a beautiful thing because every time someone comes to us to make formulas, it's always unique. It is truly the most amazing thing. So they come to us oftentimes with an idea. They'll come to us with formulas that they kind of want us to improve upon, for example, or they'll come to us with a really important ingredient. I mean, that's just to name a couple of examples. And then we formulate and then we produce the products. And that's the
And where's the lab based?
The headquarters are in San Diego, where I reside right now. We have a lab in Orange County, and actually we have one in Portugal, in Europe, for our European clients. So, yes. And we just started, actually, we're really excited about this, and I'm happy, I'm remembering to share, because for over 20 years I've been in this industry. And when I say contract manufacturing, usually you have to have higher minimums. So we don't have to get into all, the details of it all. But in order to work with us, in order to make custom products, you have to order a couple thousand of one product at a time. And that's not easy for everyone. And this has been on my mind for a long time. And so over the last couple of years, one of the things that, during the pandemic, I don't always speak of it this way, but it's the truth, that we were able to create at JBK was a private label, a white label division. And that means a lot to me, because what that means is more and more people are able to put their brand on some of our most favorite formulas that I've created over 20 years with my lab. And so that's kind of a big thing. And so I'm really excited about that. That's kind of a new thing that we've done at my lab. So
congratulations.
That's a good note for our future when we come up with a Nirvana Systems beauty or wellness product.
Yes, what's really important to you. Every time I want to create a formula to help women balance their emotions, balance their hormones, to have more energy, whatever that is. That's exactly how it starts. And people trust you, and then that's how it goes. So
I love that. And what is your book called again? And where can people?
Thank you. My book is called Young Sung, The Korean Art of Living Meditation. It's kind of a long one. That's why I just remember Dr. Jenelle Kim, Living Meditation, right? A little simpler. It's basically through Penguin Random House and Watkins. And so you can find it on the penguinrandomhouse.com website, on my website, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, basically anywhere books are sold. So I'm very grateful that it has come out, just in January. So
very exciting.
Yes. Thank you, Amy.
Congratulations. Okay. So getting into our wrap session before we close out, Jenelle, what is your favorite wellness or beauty hack? I can't remember this.
That's a hard one, Amy. My favorite.
I do. I'm like, my probably have so many.
If I had to pick one right now, one of my favorites is remembering and understanding that true beauty does come from the inside out. You have to use very clean, important products topically, because it is our largest organ, our skin, but also we really have to pay attention to improving our condition internally, increasing our circulation, increasing our chi. And of course, to me, that means supplementing with herbal formulations, being aware of my body, knowing when to take certain ones. So I don't want to go too far, but yes, it's inside out, which we're seeing much, much more in our beauty and wellness industry right now. So I'm so happy for that. Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that's great. Okay. The next one we call our 5-minute flow, which I guess could contribute to your chi. But here's the scenario. You just got out of the shower and dried off, and Uber pings you and says they're 5 minutes away. So what is your quick beauty routine?
That's probably right.
It's my Alexa.
He's like, I have one.
You just got out of the shower and dried off, and Uber just alerted you they're 5 minutes away. So how do you, what's your quick beauty routine? What do you put on? What are your kind of go-to?
I'm laughing and I'm shaking my head because that's every day. Forget Uber. That's called children, right? and podcasts. Even this morning, my kids had to be at camp at 9 a.m., which is exactly when we were supposed to be on. So that was literally my morning. So I get ready in 5 minutes. And that's just the truth. Today we're lucky. I put on a little eyeshadow for you ladies to look, all dressed up. But every day I use my herbal toner. It is one of the most important products, I think. Again, that's so hard. I'm Korean beauty, right? So I have the whole every step. But I always use a toner in the morning if I don't work out, rather than just washing my face. There's no alcohol. It's all herbs. So it's just basically, cleansing with a cotton pad. But at the same time, all of those good herbs go into my skin. So that's what I start with. And then honestly, I like a little concealer because it just makes me look a little brighter, and a little natural blush. And I go on with my day. Like literally, that's that.
And are these all brands that you make in the lab? So it's not like a brand.
Skincare for sure.
They probably can find it.
Another one I love is my exfoliator. Again, I keep making a joke. It's the Korean beauty. That is a Korean beauty hack. And I very much stand by it. Exfoliation is key. And so those are all products that I create. My bathroom looks like a lab. Literally, I have little bottles everywhere. But as far as makeup, we keep wanting to go down that direction, but we're a little bit too busy. So I go for brands out there, and the ones that I like right now, I like RMS Beauty. So very clean. I find that, I don't like to reapply. I don't look at myself in the mirror throughout the day because I figure what in the world can I do anyways? This is how I look.
Well, your skin's unbelievable. So you don't need anything.
But yeah, I like a little blush just because I'm olive skin tone, and that's about it. So, and then maybe a little lip gloss. So
love that. Okay. And how do you maintain your daily nirvana?
And I love, by the way, that is what you call your entire platform and everything that you do. And so how I maintain that is through living meditation. We're totally on the same page. Living meditation is the ultimate goal of reaching that state of nirvana, that state of honestly balance. We started this way, and I suppose we'll end this way, that, everything comes from the Tao. And for those who are not familiar with the Tao, I suggest that you become familiar in some way, because it is really powerful and most people love it. And it really is just the universe, right? And the universe is everything and nothing. It is literally that Enso circle, which is on my logo. It's that kind of brush stroke. And that's, to me, also is nirvana, right? So it's that state of from nothing comes everything, and from everything comes nothing. And so I am able to constantly keep purifying myself, creating good habits, having a self-discipline through living meditation, which is why I put it in the book.
That's beautiful.
I just want to say, before we hand the mantra over to Amy, that you really exude, Jenelle, such kind of peace and joy, and you're glowing from the inside out. So you are living proof of everything that you do and say. So we're really grateful for having you on. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I think our listeners are going to love everything you taught us. And really, I would love to have you back.
Thank you so much.
So please come back and we can dive into everything.
I'm really grateful to be here. It was a wonderful conversation. I would absolutely love to come back. So I hope it was helpful. That's for sure.
It was. Thank you. All right, Amy, what's our mantra? We like to close with a little something to end on.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is a mantra or a saying, something I found on Jay Shetty's Instagram, but it's very appropriate to what we were talking about, especially when we were talking about being drunk on your thoughts, which kind of stuck with me. So here it is. If you want to be happy, don't take stuff personal. Let stuff go. Let people be. Focus on you, your mental health, your spiritual health, your well-being, physically and financially.
I agree.
Yeah.
All of the above. Agreed, right?
All of the above. So nice to have you on the show, Jenelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Nirvana Sisters. For more information on this episode, check out the show notes, please subscribe, and leave us a review. Also, find us on Instagram at Nirvana Sisters. If you loved what you just listened to or know someone that would, please share it and tag us. Tune in next week for a fresh new episode of Nirvana Sisters. We'll continue to watch out for all things wellness so you don't have to. Bye.